One of the things in the news is the the deal between NASCAR and RTA, or the teams. So the new charter agreement. All right, me and you talked about this a couple months ago. I wanted you to come on the show, help us understand. People ask me, what's going on, what's the deal, what's the hang up, how do you feel about it?
Where's your charter?
I
when
don't
you come into Cup?
Like I don't have the details. I will say this, like for everybody listening, there's so many details on y'all's side of it. Yeah. And NASCAR's side of it. I've had the chance to sit down with Phelps and all of NASCAR and try to understand their point of view. Curious as to where the teams feel like they are. This, obviously there's not a deal. The time ran out. There was a timeline to get one done. It's not done. We're going into the Daytona 500 without a deal. That is going to be part of the headlines, especially when we're all in Daytona together. The media is going to be asking questions, so it will be mixed among the happenings of Speed Week. And so, first off, I kind of want to know, the teams are fighting for whatever opportunity in this deal they can have, right? Mm-hmm. What they feel is fair. But you're also embarking on a new season, and you definitely want the best for the sport at the same time, right? You got a Netflix deal out there that's killing it. You got the Daytona 500 staring you down with an opportunity to have a big audience, but you do have this happening in the background. And how do you and how does the RTA balance the headlines and not letting this take away from some of the momentum that's being created around the sport?
Yeah, I think the last thing any of us want, right, is this to be a topic or a hot topic leading into our biggest event, the Daytona 500, and kicking off the season. And I think it's why there was a negotiating committee that was formed 2 years ago and started conversations with NASCAR and a group that they put together. And there's been a lot of healthy dialogue. It just nothing has really moved things forward, and a lot of it was because we're waiting to see what the new TV deal was going to be. So because that was delayed, then a lot of the discussions and negotiations that were taking place were also delayed. So it's kind of what's put us here in this moment at this time. I'll start off by saying, and you've experienced this, and I've experienced in so many others. What NASCAR's built over 75 years has been incredible, and I've been able to benefit from it tremendously, as well as so has Rick Hendrick and Hendrick Motorsports and their branding. But at the same time, how do we make the sport move forward? How do everybody that's involved, from NASCAR, the tracks, as well as the teams, find a way to be sustainable and build the sport back up? You and I think, got to experience some of the best times this sport's ever had, right? You came in, you were a huge rock star, and were able to experience what it was like to see grandstands packed, full, and opportunities coming in every direction from sponsors and commercials and all that. Clearly that has changed, and I just feel like personally, as well as I think the teams in these discussions with NASCAR, is how do we need to make a change to get this thing going back in the right direction? I think the new TV contract is a good one. Did it live up to, if you look at other leagues and maybe what we thought the potential was? That's debatable, but it's done, and it's very solid. And so these discussions are not just about splitting revenues, right? It's about how do we look at the business model of a race team and build enterprise value, be more collaborative with NASCAR and how we come up with ideas that grow the sport, bring new fans. We're still very heavy on relying on sponsor income.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why things have not moved forward, is because there's probably 3-4 major key things that the teams have been very consistent on, talking to NASCAR about what we think is going to not only help the teams, be profitable. We don't make money, right? It's one of those. I don't think Hendrick Motorsports has made a profit in 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, why do you do it? Well, it's because Rick Hendrick loves the sport. He loves cars, and it's been good branding, but if we didn't have all the B2B, right, and we're one of the few teams out there very fortunate to be able to have the B2B to tie Hendrick Automotive Group and Hendrick Motorsports together and bring these sponsors in, I don't know where that would put us if we didn't have that. And there's a lot of teams out there, and that's where this negotiating committee has come along, is we got to look and think about all the teams. It's not just about Hendrick, right? It's not just about the big teams. It's every team and what's going, and there's a lot of teams struggling. And so, NASCAR's aware of it, and we've shared our, books and everything, all the details we possibly can. And they've got to run the sport too, and they have, certain criteria that they've got to meet. So, there's been good dialogue. It's just been frustrating that we haven't been able to move things, which is why we're where we're at, and we'll kind of see where that takes us moving forward.
So, what can you be specific on some of the hurdles? What are some of the things that the teams in NASCAR are arguing over?
Yeah, I think certainly starts with revenue, and just trying to figure out what the right proper splits are, versus the old charter versus the new one. You hear about evergreen. We don't say permanent anymore, but evergreen charters, right? I just look at other leagues, right, and that's who we're competing with, right? Yeah. We're competing with other major sports, as well as look at what F1 has done. If you look at the way they've been structured and the impact they've made and their popularity and how they've turned the corner and ramped it back up, especially here in America, they're truly sharing in the revenues and they're sharing in the ideas and philosophies and looking at, how do we grow, together. The Netflix thing was a big deal that's changed the game for them. I know when I go to get my hair cut and the girl that cuts my hair is like, man, I've been watching that F1 Netflix show, and I've really gotten into F1. I'm like, wow, right? And I think you've heard a lot of that. I think the Netflix show that NASCAR, I think it was great. I love it. I'm getting, a lot of people reacting to that outside of the U.S. as well. So it's good. But we got to do more things like that. And even that's been a big challenge, right? Because the teams are focused on what can we do for our sponsors. As you know, you're way into it. You and Kelly on the Xfinity side, so you know this. So I know we're trying to maybe educate some other folks that maybe don't get it. But that's where the team's focus is, because that's where the revenue comes in for us. I think that what we need to do is get to a place where we're focused on not only taking care of our sponsors and winning races, but how do we collectively grow the sport and have a broader reach, go more international, have more Netflix type shows. And right now, I just don't think that the way that the business model is put together is conducive of us putting that kind of energy into those other things as much as it is go win races.
Yeah. And so it feels like to me that that the sport, it's a bit of an impasse. So there's, NASCAR and the team owners are just kind of sitting on their hands. Everybody's put their argument forward, right? And now it's like, who's going to flinch? How long can this go? What are you willing to do? How far is this willing to go? I just don't believe that. I don't know really truly where the leverage is for the team owners. I think like a team owner. I imagine myself being in that situation. What would I do?
Yeah.
NASCAR has always had that mentality of we're here, we're going to be here long after you're gone, And Bill France would bring you in the trailer and say, "You're not going to mess up my show, and we'll show you the door if you don't want to change the way you're doing things, right?" Yeah. And so I grew up, and you were around back then, so I have that mentality in my head that that's the way NASCAR is, and they're going to run this that way, and they're going to approach everything with that same mentality that they've had for 50 years. Maybe they've evolved, maybe they've changed a little bit, but I just have a hard time understanding, like, where can you really create leverage as a team owner to help your argument?
Yeah, that's what we're going to find out, over the next several months. if you go back to when the charter was created, right? Why was the charter created? I mean, I think it was created to have a little bit more consistency in knowing what you were going to get. If you showed up to the racetrack, right, there was kind of a base amount from the TV revenue that you're splitting with NASCAR, and then you go race for the rest. And then through this last 10 years of the current charter, I think that sponsors have kind of declined as far as that revenue. And costs have gone up, and we're seeing inflation, all those things. So I think, if you look at what are the good things about the charter, well, if you have a charter, you got to show up at every race, right? And you've got to compete at a high level. And so the charter, I think, has served a good purpose. I think it's also put us, in a place where there's more of a seat at the table in discussing, how the formats of the races and where we go race and the rules and things like that. But I think that there's so much more that we can be doing. I think if we want to have the sport stay like it is and continue on the path that we're on, then all the teams will get together and say, okay, NASCAR, let's just sign what the deal is on the table. I believe, and I think a lot of other teams believe this, that the investment that the teams are making right now in the sport, and not just to go fast, but to try to build our businesses into a business that's sustainable, then something's got to change. And I think if something doesn't change, I don't think that we're going to see the sport get back to where it once was. And so what is the leverage? Well, I mean, the leverage is that right now, right, we don't have a charter agreement that guarantees that the teams have to show up at the racetracks. And, I think that right now we just want to – I think we're going to get a deal done. I mean, I think the dialogue and the conversations have been good. It's just, what are we going to have to go through in order to get there? And, I don't want to get too much into, the rest of the details, because I'm optimistic. Yeah. I'm just also, because I'm a part of this negotiating committee. Right. And I'm just also very, very frustrated that we haven't been able, we tried to get this thing done, over the last 2 years before the TV deal was put in place. And I think we had enough structure in there that shows the benefits on both sides for NASCAR, the tracks, and the teams, that if we get closer to what we're asking for, then we have something that is not only where the teams are going to invest more in the sport, that I think it also makes us true partners, in this, as well as true partners with our TV partners.
Yeah. So how organized, the RTA has been around for a good while now. How well organized in this critical moment is the RTA? How like-minded are all of the individuals who own these charters?
Very. I mean, I think it's just one of the things where, when the RTA was created, it was, why was this created? Is this a union? It's nothing like that. It's just really about sharing information and dialogue back and forth, because again, most teams are struggling, right? And so that you have dialogue with, how are you operating your business? What's happening in the sponsor market? What are your costs to go to the racetrack? And, all these different aspects of things that we can, talk about and share different ideas and philosophies. And so I think right now there's just a lot of communication that's happening between all the team owners. And because of that, I think it has brought us closer together, that, hey, we're all dealing with more of the same challenges than we even thought before. And I think over the last 2 years, I think it's that communication's only gotten stronger. Yeah.